All right, welcome back, Florida Football Insiders. You just heard the perspective from the Florida side with Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Now we are going to give you the Georgia side of things with Marc Weiszer. He's been with the Athens Banner Herald for 18 years as a writer, and he's going to join us from Athens. We're going to talk about the cocktail party. We're going to talk about Georgia season, and we're going to talk about the big showdown potentially next week with Tennessee. So, welcome to the podcast, Marc.
Hey, Jason, good to be with you.
All right, give the audience a little overview, just about the Georgia season. I know they're undefeated, obviously top, one or two in the country, depending on which poll you look at and which week. But just give the audience a little perspective and a little overview of the Georgia team through 6 games.
Yeah, they pretty much picked up where they left off last year. I mean, reigning national champions, and you knew they were loaded with talent, but you lose 15 NFL draft picks, 5 first-rounders off the defense, and you think, where is there going to be a drop-off? There's got to be a drop-off somewhere. I mean, the defense probably isn't performing quite at the level that they did last year, but they pitched a couple shutouts. They're still among the nation's leaders in many of the categories, and this whole team has done what they've done so far, which is win by 32 points a game, something like that by average, when they've been missing some of their key playmakers. I mean, A.D. Mitchell, wide receiver, has a high ankle sprain. He's only played a couple games early in the season. Jalen Carter is projected top 10 overall pick,
right,
as a defensive tackle. He's probably not going to play against Florida. Maybe. I mean, he got some practice in this week, Kirby Smart said, but he's dealt with knee injuries and ankle injuries. And, so hopefully they can get these guys back. They're hoping for the stretch run here, including starting with the Gators.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you look at the Georgia roster. Last year, obviously, all the question marks were surrounding the quarterback, and Stetson Bennett stepped up. He looks like he's just continuing to go north with his play. Todd Monken, who I know down here, used to be the OC with the Buccaneers. Really good play caller, that kind of stuff. I think he's done a real good job. And you guys got elite tight ends. You got probably the best tight end group in America with Bowers and Washington, and I don't even know if Gilbert's playing much, but great tight ends. So just a lot of creativity options on offense.
Yeah, I mean, these tight ends were so much hyped up in the offseason, by me included. Eric Gilbert was a transfer from LSU that was, a 5-star guy from the Atlanta area and didn't play at all last year because he had some personal issues, and he really hasn't played much at all this year. Got into 3 games, made his first catch as a Bulldog last time out against Vanderbilt late, in the game, and then had a touchdown in that game as well. I guess it was his second catch. So, when you have Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers, it's hard to take those guys off the field. And Kirby Smart has talked about, whether you want to rather have a third tight end on the field or some of your guys that can make more plays in space. It's a tough call. And Gilbert's might even be the 4th tight end on the depth chart now. So, it'll be interesting to see if Georgia can get some comfortable leads, whether he'll play. But Washington's a mismatch for anybody at 6'7" and 275 pounds, something like that. And Bowers, scores three touchdowns as a tight end, on rushing plays. So right. Very special skill set for him.
Yeah, talk about what's talking to Kirby in the last 3-4 weeks. What do you think is the biggest what's the one position group that he would say is kind of his, I won't say area of concern, but the one that he really wants to see get better here in the stretch run?
That's a good question. I don't think he's really pinpointed that. I think he has questions maybe about, they haven't played so many games that have gone down to the 4th quarter late. Missouri was one, surprisingly.
Right.
Didn't expect that game to be as tight as it was. So, maybe, what kind of defense this will be, when they're really pushed and shoved against some of these really explosive offenses like a Tennessee, if they play Alabama in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, offensively, again, the tight ends to me is the area that I notice most. I mean, talk about the running game and the wide receivers. There, it seems like it's kind of a committee approach there with the wide receivers and the running backs.
Yeah, it's been that way, receiver, because you've been missing A.D. Mitchell. But, Ladd McConkey was one of their top receivers last year. You wondered what they would look like without Jermaine Burton, who was a guy that can make plays downfield. Arian Smith is another guy that is kind of in that mold, but he hasn't. He's been battling injury since he's been at Georgia. Running backs, it has been committee again. You've had Dejon Edwards, Kenny McIntosh, the freshman Branson Robinson, and then Kendall Milton's coming off a groin injury, probably going to be ready to play against Florida. And we haven't seen practice for weeks. Maybe the preseason it's been open for the media, so we can't be sure. But they're going to have those guys lathered up, and nobody's really getting 15 to 20 touches. They're spreading the ball around. And in the receiving game, Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint was lost to an injury against Florida a couple of years ago, and he's kind of become a guy that's made some important third down catches. So he's another one to watch.
What obviously going into the give the our Florida audience and our fans all over the place a perspective of the cocktail party from the Georgia perspective. Obviously, neutral game in Jacksonville. What do the Georgia fans think of that? I know there's been some chatter out of Kirby. He'd love to see a home and home kind of situation in Athens and Gainesville. What's the Georgia perspective of the cocktail party?
It depends who you ask. I think the folks that are Georgia fans and boosters in South Georgia obviously love it. People that have had tickets to these games for decades really enjoy going down to the Golden Isles and making a 3-4 day vacation out of it, and then going to see the game as part of it. Kirby wants these recruiting weekends. He wants, to be able to host recruits on campus and show off, something like $170 million worth of facility upgrades he's had since he's become the head coach. Show him the indoor facility, show him the football operations center, show him the recruiting lounge. Spend quality time there. In Florida this year, they're going to be giving recruits tickets that I guess are on their list, but they can't host them at all. So, the contract's up again for an option next year after the next year's game. Maybe a little bit of momentum to put them on the campuses. It's hard to know for sure how the administration feels. I think tradition and finances are things that will sway it still strongly in Jacksonville direction. It, depends on how much Kirby wants to wield his power to maybe push it more towards campuses.
All right, so Georgia comes into the game, heavy favorite, probably 21-22, depending on where, 3 touchdown favorites, clearly. Georgia's the better team here. And you got Tennessee on deck. What is is Kirby, obviously it's a rivalry game, so you probably got the players' attention, but you got to think some of these players are looking ahead a week to Tennessee coming to town, to Athens next Saturday. Do you think that's the biggest thing that Kirby's really trying to stress to his guys is this game, next week doesn't matter if we slip up this week?
Yeah, and he can sell it to them because he's a former Georgia player that's played in this game. So the players have said that he's been talking about what this game means to them. And Kirby last year had kind of a viral moment that got leaked out from the locker room at halftime, where he had some salty language and talked about what he wanted to do to the Gators. I guess I'm not sure if that's still floating around on YouTube or not.
I'm sure it is.
So it means something to him. And, it was interesting yesterday, we had a chance to talk to Jermaine Dumas-Johnson. He's a sophomore inside linebacker. And he was talking about how the 2020 loss is still motivating to Georgia. And he wasn't even at Georgia then. So, anything they can find to find a little extra motivation. I think the fan base is jacked up for Tennessee. If they don't slip to Kentucky, it's going to be a monster game, probably be a monster game, whether they lose anyway to Tennessee, to Kentucky. But, I think coming after the open week, Kirby's got them, focused on Florida as much as he can.
And last thing, I'll get you out of here. Let's talk about, obviously I think we both think Georgia's the better team here. What are the one or two recipes for Florida to put out? Again, you had the Missouri kind of game where they didn't play very well. Is Anthony Richardson, you think in your mind that the focus here? Don't let him kill you with his legs. If he's going to beat you, make him beat you with his arm.
Yeah, I mean, Richardson can, really change the dimension of, what's going on defensively with what he does with his feet on these scrambles, maybe some design runs as well. I think Georgia can't be getting bogged down in the red zone like they did in some games earlier this season. They need to not kick field goals. And then, Ladd McConkey had a couple fumbles, earlier in the season, muffed the punt.
Right.
Got stripped or got punched out as well after a reception. So can't give Florida short fields, and you got to just play some clean football. I think Georgia they may not cover, but I think they win by about 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're clearly the better team here. They got all the marbles to play for. How excited is Athens knowing what's coming up next week potentially? I mean, you don't get a lot of these games, especially at home. Is the community really revved up and getting ready for this huge, potentially monstrous, top 3 matchup next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be hard to find a hotel, and you have to spend $500 if you're going to get an Airbnb or something like that. I don't know if that's per night or not, but they haven't had a night game this season. That's the one thing that they kind of wish the fans. And it doesn't look like Georgia Tech is usually like an early afternoon game. So they're going to make the most of it, and should be very exciting. Tennessee pushed Georgia early in that game last year. But a lot of pressure with the SEC East, inside track for the winner of that thing, and should be pretty fun Saturday next week.
Tell the fans how cool of a town it is. Athens is on game day. Small. It's a small. It's an hour outside of Atlanta, so you're close enough to the big city, but you're far enough out. Tell the audience kind of the atmosphere of Athens on a big game day.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say, particularly, and Florida fans probably, unless you came here, I guess, in the mid '90s for a Georgia-Florida game, right? That's the only time they've done it.
Right.
There were stadium renovations that year, I guess. It's a beautiful setting on campus, having the stadium where it is, and a lot of tradition. With some of the stuff they have going on, they play the Who, Bob O'Reilly before kickoff. They have a guy playing the bugle or whatever it is before kickoff, and Larry Munson. His narrated call about the history of Georgia football.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful setting, and it's becoming a harder and harder home environment as well. Georgia's, I think they won 15 in a row at home. So, one of the better places to watch college football.
Absolutely. Well, Marc, I really appreciate the time. Tell the audience where they can find you online, all your great work.
You can go to onlineathens.com and check out our stuff in our Bulldogs Extras section, and follow me on Twitter at Marc Weiszer, MarcWeiszer.
Yeah, I was talking to Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. He said, get there early. Traffic is terrible getting in and out of that stadium. So,
yeah.
So fans, if you're going to the game, don't roll in at 1:45, 2 o'clock and think you're going to make it.
Yeah, I've learned the lesson through the years to make sure I get to the parking lot at least 3 hours early.
Well, have a great game. Enjoy the setting, and good luck. Obviously, I don't care who wins, but I'd love to see a huge showdown next Saturday night where they're both undefeated in Athens. So have a good weekend, and thanks for the time.
Yeah, no problem. Good to be with you, Jason.
All right.